All right, welcome back today. And more importantly, Happy New Year to you and to your families. I hope 2021 is going to be a lot better for you than 2020. We've gone through hell this year as a group, as a community. It's been an absolute nightmare, actually. So I'm going to today break down the truth behind 2020. A lot of the things that have been going on, I'm going to step out and look at this from a logical, rational human being as opposed to adding emotion to it, and just break down some of the things that have happened. Some of the topics are going to be quite controversial, so I warn you in advance. But that is, I've made a decision now. I'm not going to keep being politically correct just so I can keep everybody happy all the time, because it's just not working for me personally. I'm feeling this conflict all the time. So I'm just going to come out with a lot of the stuff. Some of the more deeper controversial stuff is on my Patreon, as always. So go and check out my Patreon if you want to see some of the deeper stuff that we're going into here. So where better to start than with the start of the year, so January 2020, when we all heard about this mysterious virus that had been, some say released, others say that a bat took a dump onto a pig. The pig took a stroll, met a dog on its path. They're friends, they licked each other. The dog went off and he did his thing. The pig went off and some other animal came near the pig and he caught... Whatever story you want to believe, all the different governments are saying different things. China's blaming it on America. Those stories, you've seen them already. Some of the Chinese ministers saying CIA agents from America actually released it. Others are saying it's the Wuhan laboratory. There's all sorts of theories around it. I have no idea. Let's just be honest. I have no idea what the true theory is. I think it's very difficult for most of us to ever find out. But let's start with that. So we have this mysterious virus that was either released or natural. I personally don't believe it was natural because it does fit with a bigger narrative that I've been studying. And believe me, I've really gone down the rabbit hole with this. And again, I'm not an emotional person. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm very logical. I'm a businessman. You've got to remember that. I'm a businessman. So going down this rabbit hole has been very dark this year. I've discovered things that would scare the daylights out of you if I came out with everything. So let's start with this. We have this virus and the knock-on effect of this has been catastrophic. Initially, there was the lockdowns. The government announced the lockdowns and the furlough in the UK and some other countries. Furlough, if you're not in the UK or Europe, it basically means that the government will pay 80% of your wages if you are an employee and you were going to be made redundant or fired or whatever. So it's to encourage employers to keep you on. So that's the furlough. Now, you've got to look at one thing here. Where's the money coming from for this furlough, for these billions of pounds that have been paid out, billions of dollars in America on the unemployment benefits? Some people earning more on unemployment than they were in their job. This money isn't free. And again, it's not money, it's currency, which is different to money. So this currency isn't free. It all has to come from somewhere. And the GDP, so the gross domestic product, or the debt to GDP ratio of most countries is now over 100%. This is very, very bad. The last time it was sort of the levels, and we're nearing these levels now, was World War II, when we had this huge catastrophe around the world, this huge war. So we're getting to those levels now. So I actually did support the government move to give furlough, although from day one I've said, this isn't free currency. The currency is going to have to come from somewhere. We're going to have to pay it back through our taxes. So I've known that from day one, but I did support the move based on the information, keywords here, the information or the evidence that I had at the time, which is very different to now. So I did support it. I did support the lockdowns initially as well. And again, I don't support them now. So I supported the lockdowns, and the reason for that was because the information that I had was that this was a deadly virus that was going to kill 10% of the population and all these sort of statistics. Now we have the true statistics, and I'm not even allowed to say what the statistics are because I don't want my video to get taken down or anything. But you all know you're intelligent people, right? I think the people who watch my videos are intelligent. I honestly believe you are intelligent. And there's different levels of intelligence. You have IQ and EQ. A lot of the people that have a high IQ are the ones that I'm noticing are being very badly fooled at the moment. And that's because they're watching the news and the media non-stop, day in, day out. And if you saw my post on Christmas Day, I actually, for this one day only, I went on to the news to see what the stories were about. And of the 19 stories, 17 of them were about COVID on Christmas Day. Another one was a neutral story. Then there was another one about a girl and a puppy. And that was a lovely story. I enjoyed reading that. But you got to think, this is just a non-stop assault on our thoughts. So the people who are very intelligent, very high IQ, but unfortunately they're watching the mainstream media every day, they're being fooled quite badly about what's going on. The people who I would say have good EQ, emotional that is, so EQ, IQ, these are people who have very good common sense and logic. And I would class these people as outliers. Or if you've seen the film Divergent, these people are like divergents. I'm a divergent. I think most of you are a divergent, where you can't be easily manipulated. So if we look at this whole timeline now as we go through 2020, you'll actually see the patterns here. And you'll see from a bigger picture as we step out of it, what's actually more accurately going on. If you're finding value from this video so far, can you do me a quick favor? Just click the like button, and why not subscribe to get more of this kind of content from me? Thank you. But now, of course, we have the evidence and we have the data on the lockdowns, and we're finding that the only thing that the lockdowns are destroying is businesses and jobs. And that's a fact. The lockdowns are absolutely destroying and decimating, not the big businesses, of course, but the small businesses. Who are small businesses run by? They're run by outliers, by divergents, entrepreneurs. That's what entrepreneurs are. They're not easily controlled and manipulated. But of course, we have this narrative that we need the lockdowns to slow the spread of the virus. And yeah, okay, fair enough. Let's just say that is true, and it is slowing the spread of the virus because the NHS or the healthcare services would be overwhelmed. Well, the thing is, they can't really fool me on this one, because I have friends who are in the Royal Logistics Corps, who are in the army. I even have a friend who is, let's just say, a very senior military commander in the army. I mean, one of the top people. So I'm able to look at these things. I'm able to contact them and ask questions around a number of things that are going on. And the questions I start asking are, why are all these companies that were asked to produce respirators told to stand down and stop producing the respirators? Why were these medical regiments of hundreds of medical staff told to stand down and not, come into these huge centres that have been set up? Why were these huge centres set up and now not being used? But more importantly, why is it that just last week, a lady went around a hospital filming and it was empty? It was absolutely empty, this hospital. And then within, not long at all, the police came to her house and arrested her quite aggressively while she was just in her dressing gown, no clothes underneath. And they're, very aggressively arresting her, taking her away. And now she faces a prison sentence for public disturbance. You've got to start asking these questions. What actually is going on here? And of course, then, in conjunction with the lockdowns and the job losses, commercial real estate now and office spaces and all this other stuff are just crashing down. You can rent an office for peanuts now. It's just peanuts. It really is peanuts to actually rent these office spaces. And yet some of these businesses, these companies on the stock exchange are still going up. The stock market is still going up. House values are going up at a rapid rate. The cryptocurrency is going up. Gold's going up. Silver's going up. You've got to ask the question, where is all of this money or this currency coming from? Because you have a pool of currency. You all understand this. You have a pool of currency. So where is everything else coming from that's growing this pool? It is all of this new currency printing. The USA is the worst for doing this. They're just printing, or, numbers on a screen, shall we say, at a rapid rate. You've seen the figures of how much new currency has been created this year. So how does this actually work? Well, the people who get this currency first are these elitists. So they're the people in the financial sector at the top. So you've got to think of these people as the sort of nasty creatures at the top, and they're licking the cream off the top of all of this new currency first. It then goes into the banking sector as a whole, and then there's a pecking order there. They're all taking their cuts. They're getting their slither of this. They're getting the milk. And then by the time it actually gets down to the people, and this is just historical evidence, it happens every time, The people then, they get the sour stuff, the sour milk, the nasty stuff at the bottom. At this point, it's already devalued their currency. So the savers, people who save money, they're the ones that are affected the worst because of all of this new currency. So it's basically just a wealth transference from the middle class to the wealthy. And if you remember, you've seen my Great Depression series. If you remember, actually what happens is that the middle class, which is the biggest, 60, 70% of most countries, this just gets shrinked until there is no middle class left. You have a wealthy elite, and then you have pretty much everyone in the poverty class. Now, this is concerning because other times when this has happened in history, it always ends in violence. It ends in the king being hung. If you look at the French, if you haven't ever studied this, look at the French Revolution and what happened there. And actually, the people took the king, marched him through the streets, and then hung the king. Right? This is actually what eventually happened. And we're seeing a lot of things right now that are not very positive, and they're actually moving towards this sort of a direction, which concerns me quite a lot. We're seeing a lot of violence, which again is in conjunction and correlates with history. We're seeing a lot of protests and things like that. But again, you've got to ask questions around the protests where you had 14,500 people all crammed together, shoulder to shoulder, and yet there was no COVID spike. But yet, you probably saw the story about the church of 40 people. And again, I go to church, so this has affected me. Church of 40 people, they were socially distancing by a couple of meters, masks and all of this. And then it was apparently this new COVID outbreak was spread by this one church. Guys, just do the math here. Look at the logic. It doesn't necessarily make sense. And again, I'm not going to say that's a lie because I don't want me to be made a target of this. But you've got to do the math and look at this logically. They're the same time periods. How is it you have these, tens of thousands of people versus 40, 50 people? It doesn't make any sense. So that's the other thing. And of course, the other thing to touch upon is the government support. And again, I said at the start, I was very pro the government support and the lockdowns based on that information. But now that we have the more accurate information, it doesn't really make sense as to what's happening. And look at the timeline as well. This is key. 1st of April, 2021. This is a key date for you to monitor and watch. Pretty much everything, especially in the UK and many European countries, are ending on this date. So the 31st of March, and again, we're talking about extensions now of furlough and things like that. So that pushes it back a little bit. But we have originally the 31st of March was the end of furlough. It's, you've got the stamp duty end. You've got all these other benefits that are going to end on this time. You also have the eviction bans that come to an end then. You have the commercial eviction bans that come to an end then. So what we're going to see, and this is all at a time when you've seen these riots and lootings of certain businesses, but not all businesses. Look at the actual strips where these businesses have been looted. And again, I won't get into it because this is a big conspiracy theory, but there's a pattern here. I've studied it. A lot of other people have studied it. The looting and rioting is only in certain areas on certain strips, whereas other businesses are being left alone. And if we actually look at the businesses that have been affected the worst, and you actually correlate, you might find a pattern there. I'll leave that for you to do your own research, but there is a pattern there with the businesses that have been targeted, the businesses that haven't been targeted. So have a look into that. But in case I haven't made it clear then, all of these assets that are just growing and growing in value, sorry, let me correct that. All of these assets that are growing and growing in price, not value, are a direct result of all this new currency that's being put into the monetary supply. So just to be clear on another thing that a lot of people keep saying, if I'd have listened to you, I wouldn't have got all these gains in the stock market. People are misunderstanding some of my videos, I feel. I'm not giving dates, like exact dates on when the stock market will crash. I haven't. Have a look, review the videos and you'll see there is no actual date. What I'm saying is these are the points to look out for. The PE ratio, the Buffett indicator, the debt to GDP, the corporate debt levels. These are the things that I've said to monitor and look for, as well as a number of other points throughout a couple of the other videos. But I've never said, sell all your stocks right now, get out of the stock market, there's going to be a crash. I haven't said that at all. I'm saying there will be. I don't know when it's going to happen because it's all going to come in line with when they stop all this new currency creation, when the US dollar starts to collapse even further. This is going to be an apocalyptic scene for the financial markets when all this happens. And it's the same with housing prices. The reason that, again, I'm not going to go into the full methodology of this, but housing prices have gone up a little bit. Yes, they have. But housing values are not necessarily going up. If you actually correlate this to the monetary supply, they're really not exploding in value. It's just prices that are going up. So I don't think that anything has changed from all the forecasts that I've made, except the date. You have to bear this in mind, okay? You've got to understand this. The date that I make my forecasts are based on the evidence at the time. So when the government says we're going to extend unemployment, we're going to extend evictions, obviously, guys, come on, you're not stupid here. You're intelligent people. Obviously, that alters the timeline. This is just common sense. And I'm saying this because so many people keep, saying, oh, you got the timeline wrong on this and that. But I haven't got the timeline wrong. What's happened is events have changed, which push the timeline back, which I'm informing everybody about as and when they happen. And another thing that people haven't realized that's going on right now is that your standard of living has reduced dramatically in 2020. And I think it's going to continue into 2021. And especially as we go deeper into a debt crisis, we're going to see a lot more issues come about. And I personally don't see a way out this time. I don't see how the United States is going to get out of this current debt crisis. We're in a liquidity trap now. So we have these historically low interest rates. We have extremely high debt. We have an overproduction where you are exporting your dollars and importing goods from China and other places. China's your biggest holder in treasuries. They've got over $1 trillion. So is the Bank of Japan, or those two are sort of on par with one another with what they hold. Then you have the UK that's got $500 billion in your treasuries, things like that. There is something called a tipping point in finance and economics. And that tipping point is when the US dollar drops so much that China will then say, okay, we're going to dump all of these treasuries because the reason we're holding them right now, it holds up the prices of the US dollars and it makes our exports cheaper to America. So this is the key thing. So this is the trade-off between China and US and why they're holding so many treasuries. But there will come a tipping point where China will start to dump those dollars. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it will come in the future. That is basically all that inflation you've exported is going to go back to the United States. And your standard of living is going to drop by maybe 35%, just as a rough guess, 35%. It's going to be really, really bad. And that's on top of the freedoms that you've already lost currently. I personally believe America is going to be the last stand as we go deeper and deeper into the future with everything that's going on. And there's a lot of stuff I'm not talking about on this video, but I mean, again, I'm talking about it in Patreon. You can go and check them out there. But I do feel that America will be the last stand because of the Second Amendment and things like that. If it ever does come to the worst case scenario, and it will, anyone who says no, it won't, this is how it always ends. Every cycle, every republic, every empire always ends in a similar way. And to say it won't happen to America or the West or Europe or other nations is crazy. You're basically saying, I'm going to take thousands of years of history and say it doesn't apply to the present day, when actually it will. So let's talk about another area then, which is the lack of freedoms, or PSYOPs. This is what we call it in the military, PSYOPs. And it stands for psychological operations. And actually what's going on right now is textbook PSYOPs. It really is. You couldn't make it any more perfect. So what you do is you use the mainstream media. And a top tip I have for you is delete your media apps. Don't watch the news. Get your news from elsewhere. Okay? Because look, if there's a meteorite heading towards the Earth, you're going to know about it. You're going to have the military knocking on your door, or someone's going to tell you. You're going to find out no matter what. But you don't need to see 20 stories a day on COVID. No one needs 20 stories a day on COVID. Okay. So PSYOPs then, and what the military do is they'll go into an area, and that area will be dominated by the enemy, let's say. And you're just one small military. So what your job is to dominate that area. Okay, but how do you dominate a population of, a huge population when you're just a small amount of people? Well, let's say you are a technocracy. That's the key word for you there. So how do you do it? How do you dominate? Well, you dominate with technology. You dominate by using PSYOPs and propaganda. And in this case, we're using mainstream media, so we're using the news to put out all this stuff constantly until people believe anything. They believe anything. Like that story about the lady that went around the hospital filming. There was a couple of people sort of in A&E who were half asleep. Apparently, and everyone's believing this, those people were traumatized, and one of them required psychological treatment because this lady went in and went like that with her phone and then left. People are honestly believing this story. Okay, you've got to look at this differently. So psyops, what you do, you go into an area and you dominate the enemy very slowly. So what you do is you go in, you squeeze really hard, and then you push back. You give them a little bit of breathing room. But then you go in again, really, really hard. You go in even harder, and you back off again, give them a little bit of breathing room. So each time, you're not going all the way back out. You're just going a little bit back out. So people feel like, oh, phew, okay, I can breathe again a little bit. When actually, if you'd have done that from the start to that point, they wouldn't have been able to breathe. So this is what's happening. You're going in and out, until now. There's no international, like I was very unfortunate. I was a day late from actually leaving the UK. I was going to be leaving the UK because of all these lockdowns. And then because I was a little bit too late with flights and things like that, I was actually not allowed to leave the UK. So it was made a criminal offence, as I've been told. I don't know why it's illegal to actually leave the UK. It doesn't really make any sense to me, because there's a lot of countries that would welcome me in with open arms right now, but I can't travel. It doesn't really make sense. So this is what's happening. We're losing all of these freedoms. So it's back and forth, back and forth. Christmas, guys, you're allowed to meet up with your families for Christmas. This is going to be great. Again, I'm talking specifically about Europe, UK here. You can meet with your families for Christmas. This is going to be great. But then a few days before Christmas, the announcement comes in, Christmas is cancelled. Very sorry. So what happens is they're not saying that straight away, that Christmas is cancelled. They wait because you've got this hope and you feel happy and positive about Christmas, and then they cancel it. Same with New Year's. They don't say straight away, it's all going to be cancelled. They say, oh yeah, you can meet with a few friends, a couple of families, you can have a New Year's thing. Then a couple of days before, they then cancel it. So this is what to monitor and see, is that this is the pattern that keeps coming up. And it's going to continue. Already we're starting to lose a lot of our freedoms. And this isn't even coming into what's coming in the future, which is a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. I'm going to have a video series coming out about that in the near future. And that is where things are going to get pretty dire, unfortunately. So overall, 2020, if I had to summarize it, it would be a loss of freedoms under a pretense that everything is going to be better in 2021. Economically, financially, everything's going to be better. When mathematically, again, people keep telling me to keep positive. Neil, be more positive. That doesn't really apply here. If someone sat me down and said, please tell me what is 5 plus 5, I would say 10. I wouldn't go, right, let's give this some positive energy here. 5 plus 5, 10. It makes no difference whether I'm negative or positive about it, because this is an economical, it's a financial, a mathematical problem that we now have called a liquidity trap. This is what's going on. And I personally feel that this is going to continue. We're going to continue with these losses of freedoms, and people are setting their own trap going into these losses of freedoms. Personally feel we're going to go into that until this new currency comes about. Again, people think I'm a conspiracy theorist for talking about a new currency that's going to be coming in. I don't think so. I think this is going to happen. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I don't necessarily think it's going to be 2021, although it could. You know, whenever new currencies have happened in the past, it's been a shock and awe overnight thing that's occurred. My Great Depression diaries that you've been watching. Overnight, all the banks just suddenly closed, not allowed any withdrawals for years. These are the sort of things that happen. So it could happen in 2021. I'm just not sure. But I don't think it will happen in more than, say, 3, 4, or even at a maximum 5 years. The US dollar doesn't have that long. I just can't see it. So I do think, and again, when that US dollar comes down, all the other currencies are going to come down as well. They have to, because they have to peg their values against the US dollar. Otherwise, their exports and everything else is going to be too expensive. There's going to be a lot of problems. They're all going to connect. The US dollar is the one to watch. The US dollar is the source. Everything links back to the dollar. So I know that's probably a little bit controversial today. I went a little bit deeper than you might have thought, but that is what the truth is about 2020. And I'm not keeping positive for 2021. Just to be honest with you, not keeping positive at all. So thank you so much for watching this video today. Please click like, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share this with anyone you think needs to see it. But other than that, thank you so much. God bless. See you next time.